the the idea that I had was that like every time we meet, we end up chatting about um, how to manage patients or problems or issues, and it's obvious that yourself, myself, Kathy, Haroon would maybe approach a similar problem in different ways from each other. And this, and so we always end up talking about it, and it's always very interesting. So I thought something that we videoed one of the chats and shared it with the members, they might find something useful out of it.
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
that's why we're doing this today. Uh, One of the things that came up at the most recent board meeting was we were discussing the foam sclerotherapy workshop that we'll be running as part of the conference. Um, and so Philip, myself, and Hugh Davies, who's going to demonstrate a case for us as well. We all do things slightly differently from each other, and yet we all seem to get very good results. And a bit of a conversation sparked off that. One of the things that came up was elevating the leg, and if you've seen Haroon's stuff on veins, the vein expert group on Facebook recently, that has obviously struck a chord with them. So I thought we'd sort of have a quick chat about, do you or do you not elevate the leg when you're administering foam?
Yeah.
We know Philip does for every patient and for every vein injection. We'll do it with the leg elevated and flushing the cannulas and trying to achieve an empty vein. What do you do?
Right. I'll have to hold my hands up. As with everything, I was inverted commas Philip trained. So the first person I went to try and learn foam sclerotherapy was Philip. And then I went to Andrew Bradbury there afterwards as my old boss. So I started off elevating the leg for everything as well, as the empty vein technique and Andrew Bradbury and Philip would have suggested. As time's gone on, I've moved away from that, moved away from it twofold. I found it slightly cumbersome in the small rooms that I was using to be running around with drip stands and moving them either side of the bed, depending on whether you were doing a left leg or a right leg. And so actually, I started moving away from elevating the leg, but what I did start doing was, in almost all patients, putting them into a deep Trendelenburg. So certainly all the beds I had are adjustable beds wherever I've been working. So I'd put them into a deep Trendelenburg, and so at least the leg would be higher than the heart. As time's gone on, however, I would only really have major concerns in my own head and go to Trendelenburg if I thought it was a particularly large vein, i.e. sort of more than 0.6 or so of a centimeter. So I've really sort of moved towards now, I do almost everything flat. I don't necessarily elevate the leg. I do everything flat. I would still preferentially put cannulas in and flush. But as far as the elevation part goes, no, I'm not elevating every patient.
Yeah, yeah. My story is slightly different in a way. Again, I had done quite a bit of foam on my own before starting to spend time with Philip and seeing him in action and seeing his technique. And I didn't elevate the leg at all prior to seeing him or to
Mhm.
seeing him treat patients. I started elevating the leg afterwards. I thought at the time it would help with closing the great saphenous vein rather than helping reduce phlebitic reactions in the varicosities. Um, and on one occasion, as you said, it adds an element of faff to the procedure. And if you have a patient with stiff hip or something, and some of the elderly patients don't like lying with one leg hoiked up in the air. But on one occasion, I was having an issue with the cannula in the great saphenous vein, and I couldn't, for whatever reason, flush through the side port. So with the leg elevated, and I took I was able to flush the cannula through the side port, but it wasn't flushing very well. So I thought I'd give the foam down the back end of the cannula, took the cap off, and after, even with the leg elevation and flushing the tumescence fluid, blood hosed out the end
Yeah.
of the green cannula that I had in the great saphenous vein. And I just thought, well, these veins are not being emptied by this maneuver. The varicosities are being emptied, but I wasn't seeing much of a difference in post sclerotherapy phlebitic type reactions with the leg
Mhm.
elevated compared to the leg flat, because here,
Yeah.
you're administering foam to see spasm, and then you can stop. So for that reason, I moved away from it. And like you, I still elevate the leg if I'm dealing with large varicosities to help empty those, help with getting spasm in those with smaller quantities of foam, rather than larger. But as far as treating the great saphenous vein, it didn't seem to make a difference to my closure rates or the experience. So I'm a sometimes elevator as well.
Yeah. I think it's what's. I think one thing I sort of, well, as I started to look around and sort of see what other people did, you've got people in the US, you've got people in other parts of Europe who actually, I would still preferentially use a cannula, but you've got people who use it via a direct needle technique. And so unless you've got some sort of a weird three-way tap setup, etc., you're not actually going to be able to, all you can do is deliver foam down the needle. You can't actually flush this vein out. Plus also, if you're using a direct technique, you can't elevate the leg, because if you elevate the leg, you're going to lose your target vein to get into. So certainly you've got a cohort of patients who are being treated by experts who are obviously getting extremely good results, but actually they're obviously not elevating the leg. If in fact they're not elevating the leg, and they're not flushing through, so they're getting good results. So from my perspective, it was sort of a case of, well, you know what, if they can get good results that way, then certainly my compromise of patient being flat or patient being in some sort of Trendelenburg, if I've got a cannula in, or sometimes direct needle injection if I'm finding trouble, because sometimes I find you sometimes have trouble getting the cannula to stay. You get the cannula in, but the reason it's so tortuous, or there's an issue, that actually by the time you come to try and then use that cannula, the cannula is displaced. So certainly on those occasions, I would then give consideration to direct needle injection into the vessels. And if I'm direct needling the vessel, the leg will not be elevated. They'll be flat, or even in a slight reverse Trendelenburg.